Okay, here we go. So this is actually Friday the 13th instead of Thursday, due to adjusting the dates. So if you would take a minute and just go ahead and sketch these three graphs in your notes. Just real quick, give yourself a little bit of room to write on them. We're going to add a few things. Okay, so we're going to actually look at some additional function notation today and some composite functions. To start out, let's take a look at just some graphs. So the first one, we've got kind of a line, just a line graph going. And as you notice, this is increasing because it is going up. That should look kind of familiar to you. That's a linear graph. We work with those a lot in algebra. Most of the rest of this semester we'll be working on linears. We also have a point here, which is called a y-intercept, which should be familiar. And in this case, this one is increasing. And if you were to kind of look at what's actually going on here, this is a lawn mowing service. So the more time increases, the more money I make. So that kind of makes sense there. This next one, it's a curve, and it is called an exponential function. And this one is actually an exponential decay because it's going down. You can see how it curves, and it's going to start here. It's going to have a y-intercept, and it's going to come down and be approaching a minimum, which means there's going to be a bottom. And in this case, it would be approaching 0. So look at what's happening. This is vehicle depreciation, which means the value of the car is decreasing as time goes on. So as the more years pass, the more my value decreases. This is another type of function that we're going to be looking at in the second semester. This is actually chapter 7, I believe. And we look at two types. We look at exponential growth and exponential decay. And there's a lot of things in our lives that have something to do with exponential growth and decay. A couple of things would be like compound interest, interest on loans. That is going to be exponential growth. Just germs, like the development of germs and how fast colds spread and that kind of thing. That is exponential growth. So that is also another one that we'll be looking at. Okay, the third one is rather interesting. So this one is kind of an upside down smile. So I'd say like it's a frown. This one actually has a maximum. So the maximum is going to be up here, which means it is a top value or the highest value. This one does not have a minimum. However, it does have 2 points where it actually crosses the x-axis. So it has 2 x-intercepts. 2 x-intercepts. And this one is actually going up, and then it reaches the top, and then it comes down. So that's kind of an interesting, different pattern than what we've seen before. So this one is looking at advertising expense and profit over a period of time. So you can see it starts out that the profit is very low, and then the profit gets maxed out, and then it starts to decrease, which means something needs to change. This one is actually called a quadratic function. Okay, and even more interesting with this one is this one actually has a center. So if I was to draw a line kind of down the center, not a very good line, but that would actually be like a mirror image of the graph. So the left side actually matches the right side. So when we have this line down the center, that is what we call symmetry. So those are just some words that we're going to be kind of using more as we move forward. So intercepts, x and y intercepts, those should be familiar from last year. Maximum, which is a top, a minimum would be a bottom. Symmetry is the middle. This quadratic we're actually going to be doing a lot in second semester with. That's actually chapter 8 and 9. Okay, let's check some homework from last night. So you were to have determined whether or not these were functions. And remember, a function to be is, there's 2 ways to check. One, there can be no duplication of x's in the domain, and they can pass the vertical line test. So The first one is a yes, the second one is a no, because if you take a look right here, there is a duplication of a 4. 22 is no, because there are double 5s. Cannot have a duplication of the x's. Remember, the x's are the domain and the y is the range. 23 is fine, there's no duplication. 24 is not a vertical line test. It fails the vertical line right here, so it's not a function. And then 25, it is. It doesn't have any duplications or any problems when I draw the vertical line test. Nothing is intersected. Okay, 27 is yes, 28 is no, 29 is yes, 30 is no, 31 is yes, and 32 is yes. 32 is a linear. So remember y equals mx plus b. I can move this y over and I still have y equals mx plus b. So these two are lines, okay? We'll come back and talk about 29 and 30 in just a second. Let's keep going. And just to finish up these problems. So 33 is -1, 34 is -15, 32 is 14, 33 is -6, 37 is -4, 38 is -10, 39 is -8y minus 3, 40, 36m squared minus 30m, 31, -2c plus 7, 42, -2r minus 7, 43, -10d minus 15, and 44 is 3n squared plus 15n. So I will go ahead and do a few of these down here, but I want to come back up here and talk about 28 and 29 and 30. So specifically on 29 and 30, I'm going to draw a quick xy axis over here. Remember, this is my x and this is my y. So if I take a look at number 29, I'm going to go ahead and draw this line in yellow. So y equals -8. -8 is over here. And that would be on the x-axis. And then down here is -8 on the y-axis. So here's the issue. It says y equals -8. Well, that means I am on this point right here. And there is no x value in that equation. There's no x there. So I cannot touch the green line with the line that I'm going to draw. I cannot touch it. So the only line that I can actually draw that goes through -8 but doesn't touch the x is a horizontal line through the -8. So this one is a horizontal line. Okay, so then if I think about this guy, x equals 15, well, if we put 15 out here, so there's 15, and I think about the fact that that's an x, not a y, that means I cannot touch this axis. I can't touch it. So the only line I can draw through 15 and not touch the y is a vertical line. When I see x equals, I know that's a vertical line. When I see y equals, that is a horizontal line. So this one, those two are just two special types of linears. When you take a look at number 28, make sure that you notice that those are those two 4s. That's why there's no function there. Okay, let's go ahead and keep going here and take a look at the problems from the homework from last night on 33 through 44. So this was purely substitution. Remember, this is just fancy substitution. And the difference is if this is an F, then I have to use this expression, and if it's a G, I have to use the second one. Now remember, the math happens on the right side. So the numbers are going to be substituted in here, and that's where the answers come from. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and look at 38. So it says f of 0 minus 7. So that means I have to plug in 0 first. So -2 times the 0 minus 3. Well, that's going to be 0. 0 minus 3 is -3. Well, this -7 is still here. So -7 minus -10, or -3 minus -7 is -10. So that's where that answer comes from. So when I actually write my answer starts out with whatever the original problem was that replaces the f of x. That's just a designation of how do I write that. Okay? All right, let's take a look at, let's say 41. So we have C minus 5. So -2, the C minus 5, and then -3. So this is a distributive property. So -2C plus 10 minus 3, simplifying, that's going to give me a -2C plus 7. So that original function I started with was f of C minus 5. So my answer should look something like that. All right, let's take a look at 44. So 44 is interesting because there's a variable and there's a number on the outside. So 44 and 43 are very similar. So this should help you with to do 43 also. So the first thing I notice is that I have to do g. So g is x squared plus 5n. And let me erase that and we'll write that a little bit better. X squared plus 5x. So notice that what they want me to substitute in is n. So really all that's happening is I'm replacing the variables with n. So that really becomes n squared plus 5n. But notice how I still have the 3 here. So that is purely just distribution. 3n squared plus 15n, and it is done. I'm not going to get a numeric answer for that. Remember, when we write that, we always go back to what the original problem was that we were substituting in so we know what goes where. If you have additional questions on those, make sure that you get with me or get with somebody else in the classroom. Send me a message on Schoology. I'm happy to kind of work you through how to do those. Okay, let's talk about composite functions, which is the next step of functions. So these they look confusing, but they're actually pretty simple. You can see that I'm still given two functions. I have f of x and g of x, but all of a sudden, they're going to be written inside of each other. So this one is read f of g of x. This one is read g of f of x. And all I'm doing is taking the answer from one and putting it into the other. So I have to actually solve twice. I solve the first one, which is the inside one. So you always start on the inside. And then you take the answer and put it in the other one. So inside out again is kind of what we follow. Okay, so let's take a look at this first one. We have f of x equals 3x minus 5 and g of x equals x squared. And notice there's a couple different ways to write these. So we have this f kind of looks like fog. That kind of looks like a little tiny O there. That is really this. Okay, and this one is really that with the f on the inside. So this one tells me I'm going to do g first. So I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to do g first. So I start out with the g of 3. Well, I plug in the 3 for the x and all of a sudden I get a 9. So that answer is a 9. Now that is what I'm going to use in the f function. So now f of 9 is 3 times 9 minus 5. So 27 minus 5 gives me 22. So my f of g of 3 equals 22. Same thing on this guy, except for I'm starting with f. So I have f of 3 equals 3 times 3 minus 5. So that would be 9 minus 5, which would be 4. So this time I'm using that answer as I move forward and putting it into the g. So g of 4, I'm squaring the 4. So there is my answer. So again, g of f of 4. That's how those are read. So not difficult. It just means you have to do things twice. Let's look at another one. This time let's use -2. Same type of problem. I have g of f of 2, which means I'm going to be doing the f first. And then I also have f of g of -2, which means I do the g first. Remember, it's inside out. So I'm starting with f of -2. -3 times -2 plus 4. 6 plus 4 gives me 10. So that is the answer that I'm going to use as I move into the G. So G of 10, that's 10 squared, that is 100. So G of F of, where did I start? I started with -2, that equals 100. All right, so first step here is G. So G of -2, and I am taking -2 and squaring it. Make sure you don't lose that negative, because negative times a negative is positive. So that's actually a +4, not a -4. That is what I'm going to use in my F function. So F of 4, -3 times the 4, there's the substitution. -12 plus 4 is going to give me a -8. So F of G of -2 equals -8. All right, let's move on to the next piece. This is function operations, which is just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So this is having to solve two problems, take the answers and either add them or subtract them. So this one is different. You're going to find the answers, then do the operation. Okay, so either multiply, divide, add, or subtract. So you always, it doesn't make any difference which order you go in here. This one, it wants you to do F first and then G first and then add. This one's F minus G. It could be G minus F, so you do have to kind of keep track of which number goes where. Division, top number divided by bottom number. And again, this one is a dot, which means it actually means multiplication, not a composite, which is an open circle. If I go back, you can see how this is an open circle, and this is a dot, which means times, okay? All right, so let's do a couple of these. This one is multiply. So they're wanting me to multiply the answer when I'm using 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just write next to this guy. Remember, when I substitute, I should always use parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and just write my template here. And I'm going to substitute in a 1. So here's a 1, here's a 1. So 1 squared is 1, 1 plus 4 plus 2, that's going to give me a 7. So my G function, my answer is 7. Okay, let's do the same thing on the H function. The -3 plus 2, again, I'm substituting in a 1. So -3 plus 2 gives me a -1. So I'm multiplying the 7 times the -1, which is going to give me a -7. So G multiplying H of 1 is actually -7. So same thing here, this one's subtraction. So I'm going to substitute in the 4 and then substitute in the 4 and see what I get. So 4, let's put in the 4 minus 3. 4 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 3 is going to be a 9. Substituting in a 4 here. Plus 2 times the 4. 4 cubed is 64 plus 8. That gives me 72. And I'm subtracting 9 minus 72. 9 minus 72 is going to bring me to a -63. Same process as in the adding. Same process. So we need to go ahead and substitute in and then add. So 3 times my 10 plus 3, well, that's going to be a 33. I substitute in for my H, -4 times 10 plus 1, that is a -41, and I am adding. So 33 plus -41, that's going to give me a -8. So again, that starts out with H plus G of 10 equals -8. There's my answer. Division, biggest thing is make sure that you have the right numbers on top. So 3, substitute in the 3 plus 2, 9 plus 2, that's going to be 11. 2 times 3 minus 4, 6 minus 4, that is a 2. So in this case, G of F of 3 is 11 over 2. And that is not going to simplify, that is done. So you can see that adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing is really not a difficult process. You just have to come up with the two numbers and then add or subtract. Okay, so that kind of sums up what you're doing as far as the new process for today. Go ahead and work on that homework. If you are struggling, all the answers are worked out for you on the answer sheet that the substitute has. But there's also a video below this one where I worked out the answers for you, some of the answers for you, so you can kind of see the process in case you're struggling. And remember, there's no school on Monday, and I will see you on Tuesday, where we'll do a little bit of review, kind of check and see where you're at, and then right now the test is scheduled for Thursday. Have a good weekend.